Hey guys, welcome to this video. So today's video is just going to be about 5 things that I found quite difficult to sort of pick up and learn and understand during first term. So if you're a current student, I think if you're curious, you might find this a bit interesting. Otherwise, if you're just generally curious, then go ahead and watch this video. I hope you enjoy it. Number 1. So I really enjoyed hematology, but I found early on that learning, like basically looking at blood films and being able to identify different types of cells, and also the different type of leukemias was really difficult. So within the granulocytes, there's 3. So there's basophils, neutrophils, and eosinophils. And early on, there were so many different types of cells that we were looking at, and we were basically quickly being asked to identify, what cell is this, what cell is this, by just looking at the picture. And they all look fairly similar. So they do have distinguishing factors, such as some of them have like indented nucleuses, some of them are bilobed, some of them I think have a segregated nucleus, and there's different things, and some of them you can clearly see kind of granulocytes in them. So you do learn to pick it up, but in the beginning it's just they all look similar. And with blood films of different types of leukemias, again there are like some distinguishing factors. So with if it's a myeloid type of leukemia, you might see things like granulocytes, because those are myeloid cells. If it's one of the kind of acute type of leukemias, then you'll tend to see like bigger cells because they're blast cells. If it's a chronic type of leukemia, you might see a more variety of cells because mature cells are produced. So you do pick these things up. I think with a chronic lymphocytic leukemia, you see like a smear, a blood smear. So there are distinguishing factors, but early on they just all look the same. And I remember thinking I'm never going to be able to get my head around it, and I'm acting like I finally have, and I haven't. It's just now I feel a bit more comfortable because I know as long as I keep these things in mind and I practice, I will get to the point hopefully where in the exam I can distinguish between different blood films and what's going on in the blood film. Second thing is immunology in general. So immunology is like one of the modules that we do in POM. It's one of I think 4 or 5, and I was having a conversation with this about my friend over WhatsApp the other day, and he said I think he thinks it's hard because it's the least well structured, and I agree. So I think out of all the modules of sub-modules of POM that we did, immunology was hard because it was just weirdly structured. And there's a lot going on in immunology. I feel like it's probably the one that has the most detail. So if you're doing A-levels or whatever, pay attention to immunology and get the basics, because you cover it in more depth when you get here in first term. So that was kind of difficult. Third thing I found quite difficult is risk in genetics. So we often, one of the things that we have to do in our genetics module, which again is a sub-module of POM, is look at a family tree and be able to identify if X person in the family tree, so a grandparent is a carrier, what's the risk that their 4th grandchild or whatever is going to carry have that disease as well. So it's quite straightforward when it's like a simple family tree, but when you're moving across different sides and looking at cousins and second cousins and half siblings and stuff, the risks get really big, and I still haven't figured out how to I know there is a method to it, but I haven't figured it out. So that's something that I found a bit challenging. Risk in genetic trees. So that's number 3. The 4th thing for me is, so within cellular biology, so I'm going to cut a couple 2 things, but these are 2 different topics. So cell cycle and cell receptors. So we don't cover cell cycle in too much depth, but we do look at the G1 phase, G2, the S phase and the M phase, and how that cycle goes. So I don't think we look at mitosis in particular, so breaking down the M phase, and when the spindles separate the things and they're pulled. I hope you know what I'm talking about. So we don't look at that in too much depth, but just getting my head around cell cycle again has been difficult. So that's something I need to kind of go over again because I found it a bit hard. Coupled with that, is the G is protein receptors. So we look at this. I think there's 4 or 5 subclasses of receptors, ligand receptors. I think there's G protein coupled receptors. So for me, I don't know why that word G protein coupled receptors just seems really complicated. So finally, the last thing I kind of found quite challenging in first term was anatomy in general. So anatomy I don't find it challenging in the sense that it's really difficult to understand, but it's just there's so much that comes at you really quick. and they mix it up with basically all this different terminology of how to like looking at planes, and they won't say something is like at the top of your head. They'll be using words like that it's superior and it's rostral and it's dorsal and it's ventral and distal and lateral and deep, superficial. So and these kind of planes change according to how you're like, it's different for the brain and different for the spine and the body. And also there's basically within anatomy, you also get you have to learn how to identify these different things in different types of scans. So it's never like really straightforward diagrams. It's usually like these MRI images or CT scans or cadaveric images, and things look kind of different depending on the type of scan, and also the angle at which you're looking at it. So there's something called sagittal, coronal. These are planes. Sagittal, I think, is like in the middle. There's coronal, which is like it's in the middle as well, but it's this way rather than this way. There's axial, which is like transverse, and there's also like if you're looking at something from the bottom, I think it's ventral. So if you're looking at the head up, from the skull up. So sorry if you're not if you're like a new student or something, or you haven't covered all this in depth, then it's going to seem a bit like it's a lot. And it is. So anatomy, just because of the amount of stuff that we do, and it comes really, really quick. And the other thing is, during like lab sessions, we don't get we get a chance to look at 1 or 2 things, but there's usually 20 things we need to cover. So I didn't realize until quite recently that I need to go over all the other 18 things to make sure that they're in my head. So yeah. So I hope you guys found that interesting. Those have been like the 5 things that I found really challenging in first term. And hopefully I'll get my head around, to studying those things in a bit more depth, so that when exams come around, at least I'm, somewhat confident. That's it. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you guys for watching. Take care. Bye.